The evening had only just begun, but the hotel lobby was already glowing with warm lights and soft music. It was one of those charity nights where everything seemed perfect: the polished floors, the tall glass windows, the elegant decorations that must have taken hours to arrange. People in expensive clothes talked and laughed as if they belonged to another world. And right in the middle of all this, a young waitress moved quietly from table to table, placing glasses, adjusting plates, making sure nothing looked out of place. She had worked many events before, but tonight felt heavier. Maybe it was the crowd, maybe the pressure of serving so many important people, or maybe it was because she felt like she didn't belong among such fancy decorations. She kept her eyes down most of the time, but she was careful and polite. Even though she barely spoke, everyone who worked with her knew she did her job with a kind of calm focus that most people couldn't hold. A grand piano stood on the stage near the front of the hall. Its glossy black surface reflected the lights like a mirror. She tried not to look at it, but every time she passed by, she felt something stir inside her, not fear, not sadness, something deeper. It had been a long time since she had touched piano keys, but the memories never truly left. The event grew louder as more people arrived. Cameras flashed, groups formed around tall tables, and distant laughter floated through the air. Then a group of well-known business figures walked in, and the energy in the room shifted slightly. Among them was a millionaire who seemed to enjoy having the spotlight on himself. Everyone recognized him instantly: confident walk, loud voice, expensive watch. The kind of person who didn't need to introduce himself because everyone already knew who he was. He walked in as if the whole event had been arranged for him alone. People greeted him, and he greeted them back with a big smile, shaking hands like a politician who knew exactly how to look impressive. His group followed behind, also dressed in suits, laughing at jokes that seemed to revolve around money, power, and success. The waitress came to serve them drinks, her hand steady even though they stood out more than other guests. The millionaire noticed her almost immediately, not because she did anything wrong, but because she didn't react to his loud jokes the way others did. She simply placed the drinks on the table and stepped back quietly. He raised an eyebrow and looked at her with a playful expression. "You're very serious," he said with a laugh, turning to his friends. "Look at her. Not even a smile. Maybe we should get her to loosen up." His friends chuckled, amused by the idea. The waitress simply offered a polite, small smile and nodded before stepping aside. She didn't want any trouble. She didn't want attention. She just wanted the night to pass smoothly, but the millionaire wasn't done. His eyes moved toward the grand piano on the stage. "What a big piano," he said loudly, as if making an announcement to the room. "All these events think they need something fancy to look important." His friends laughed again, following whatever he said. Then he suddenly pointed at the waitress. "Hey, what about you? Do you play?" he asked in a tone that wasn't rude but wasn't respectful either. More like he expected a joke to follow. The waitress froze for a moment. She wasn't sure why he asked her that or why he thought it was funny. A couple of nearby guests looked at her as if waiting for her answer. She didn't want to lie, so she quietly said, "I used to practice a little." The millionaire's face lit up with excitement. He looked at his friends as if he had discovered something entertaining. "Did you hear that? She used to play." He looked back at her. "Why don't you show us something then?" Her heart thumped hard in her chest. She wasn't expecting that. She wasn't prepared for that. She looked down at her tray, then at the piano, then at the crowd around her. "Sir, I'm working," she said softly. "That doesn't matter," he said with a laugh. "Come on, it'll be fun. Play something for us." More eyes turned toward her. She could hear whispers starting already, some people amused, some surprised, some uncomfortable. She knew exactly how it looked, a waitress being put on display for entertainment. She didn't want to embarrass herself or cause a scene. She also didn't want to get in trouble with her manager. Her manager stood near the entrance, watching the situation with a tense face. It was clear he didn't want a conflict with the millionaire. He didn't say anything, but his worried expression made her feel even more trapped. She tried again. "I don't think this is a good idea. I haven't played in a long time." "Even better. the millionaire said, clapping his hands together. Come on, everyone loves a surprise. Some guests chuckled, expecting her to refuse. Others looked sorry for her, knowing she didn't have much choice. Servers nearby stood still, unsure what to do. The millionaire's friends started cheering lightly, not out of support, but out of amusement. They thought it would be funny to see a waitress attempt something on a stage meant for professionals. Then something changed in her expression. For a small moment, she remembered someone who once believed in her, a teacher, a friend, a family member, someone who told her that music wasn't about perfect notes, but about heart. She hadn't believed that for years, but the memory made her chest feel warm. She wasn't someone who enjoyed being pushed around. She lived quietly, but she wasn't weak. And maybe, just maybe, playing a single piece wouldn't ruin anything. Maybe it would remind her of who she used to be. She took a slow breath, placed her tray on a nearby counter, and nodded slightly. Okay, she said softly. The small group around her reacted immediately. Some looked surprised. Some whispered. Some thought she was being pressured. The millionaire grinned triumphantly, as if he had won a challenge he had created for himself. Great, he said. Let's see what you've got. She walked toward the stage, her steps slow but steady. Every sound in the room felt louder: the clinking of glasses, the rustle of dresses, the low murmur of guests who hadn't expected any entertainment yet. The closer she got to the piano, the heavier her heart felt. She wasn't scared of playing. She was scared of being judged, laughed at, misunderstood. But she also knew she couldn't step back now. Some servers watched her with wide eyes, silently hoping she wouldn't embarrass herself. A few guests crossed their arms, expecting a clumsy performance. Others leaned forward with curiosity, wondering if maybe, just maybe, something special might happen. When she reached the piano, she touched the edge gently. The surface was cold but smooth. She stood there for a moment, letting the noise of the hall fade slightly. She didn't want to look at the crowd, so she kept her eyes on the keys as she slowly sat down on the piano bench. Her hands trembled a little. She placed her fingers above the keys but didn't press them yet. She took a quiet breath, longer than usual, letting the moment settle inside her. Behind her, the millionaire stood with his arms crossed, still smiling. He expected something simple, maybe even messy. He had no idea what was about to happen. All around the room, people stopped talking. The lights didn't change, but something in the air did. The room felt different, heavier, quieter, as if everyone sensed that the next few seconds mattered. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, not to think, but to feel. And then, with a calmness she didn't think she could find in a room full of strangers, she pressed the first note. The first note she played hung in the air like a soft whisper. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was gentle, almost fragile, but it carried something special that made the entire room pause. People who had been laughing stopped mid-sentence. Others who were walking slowed down without realizing it. Even the servers nearby, who had been rushing from one table to another, turned their heads toward the stage. Her fingers rested lightly on the keys as she began to play the next few notes. They were slow, warm, and full of emotion. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at the millionaire who had challenged her. Her eyes were half closed, not because she was nervous, but because she was listening to the sound, to the memories that lived inside the music, to the person she used to be before life made her put her dreams on the shelf. The room grew quieter and quieter. People who didn't care at first now leaned forward. Some put their glasses down without noticing. The millionaire's smile faded, replaced by a confused expression. This wasn't the clumsy performance he imagined. This wasn't a joke. Something real was happening in front of him. Her hands moved smoothly across the keys, as if they had been waiting for this moment. The melody shifted from soft to emotional, telling a story without words. It spoke of long nights, hidden pain, deep hope, and silent strength. And even though nobody knew her past, they could feel pieces of it in every note she played. The lights reflected off the piano, creating a warm glow around her. She didn't seem like a waitress anymore. She didn't seem like someone standing on a stage because she was forced. She looked like someone who belonged there, someone who carried a hidden world inside her that was finally being seen. In the corner of the room, her manager watched with wide eyes. He had always known she was quiet, but he had never imagined she had this inside her. Several guests glanced at him as if asking, "Why didn't you tell us she could play like this?" But he was just as surprised as they were. The millionaire shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His friends who had laughed earlier now sat still, their eyes fixed on the stage. None of them were laughing now. One of them leaned closer to the millionaire and whispered, "She's actually good." But the millionaire didn't respond. He was too busy trying to understand how a simple challenge had turned into something so powerful. Her music grew deeper, richer, filling the room with a calm that wrapped around everyone like a blanket. Some guests stood quietly with their hands folded, as if afraid to interrupt. Others placed a hand on their chest, touched by something they didn't expect to feel that night. A couple on the far side of the hall held hands without saying a word. The melody reminded them of a time when they were younger, when everything felt simpler. A woman near the front touched the corner of her eye, surprised to find a tear forming. She wasn't sad, the music just made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. The waitress herself felt lighter with every note. She wasn't thinking about the millionaire or the crowd anymore. She wasn't thinking about whether she would be judged or ridiculed. She was simply playing, letting her heart speak through her fingers. Pieces of her past floated through her mind, nights spent practicing after school. Quiet mornings when music was the only thing that made sense. Moments when she believed she could become something more, but life had forced her away from that dream. Bills, responsibilities, reality, they all pushed her into a different path. And when she stepped away from music, she never thought she would touch a piano again. But here she was, sitting on a stage she never planned to stand on, rediscovering a part of herself she thought she had lost forever. The melody reached its most emotional point. Her fingers moved faster now, but not in a show-off way. It was as if she was pouring years of silence into the keys, letting go of everything she had held inside. The room tensed slightly, as if everyone was holding their breath without meaning to. Then the music softened again. Her hands slowed down, guiding the final notes with gentle care. The last few seconds felt like time had stopped. When the final note echoed across the hall, it lingered for a moment, floating in the air before fading into silence. The room was completely still, not a single glass clinked. No one whispered. It felt like everyone needed a moment simply to understand what had happened. The waitress sat there with both hands resting on her lap, not sure what to expect. She didn't look up yet. She didn't want to see disappointment or forced smiles. She just wanted the silence to settle. Then, slowly, someone clapped, just one person at first. A single clap that echoed through the hall, then another joined, and another, within seconds. The entire room erupted into applause. It wasn't polite or basic. It was loud, sincere, and filled with disbelief. People stood up from their chairs. Some whistled. Some clapped with both hands as loudly as they could. The entire hall felt alive again. But in a different way than before, the waitress finally looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. She had expected a few polite claps, maybe a nod or two. But she didn't expect this. She didn't expect the entire crowd to look at her as if she had just performed a miracle. Her manager clapped the hardest, a proud smile on his face. Nearby servers clapped too, some with tears in their eyes because they knew how rare it was for someone like her to get a moment like this. The millionaire stood there frozen. He didn't clap right away. He looked shocked, almost embarrassed. This wasn't the outcome he had planned. He wanted to make a joke, not to witness something unforgettable. After a moment, he finally began clapping too, though his expression showed he was still processing what had just happened. One of the guests approached the stage as she stood up from the piano. "That was beautiful," the guest said warmly. Another came up to her and said, "You should never stop playing." A third person offered her a card, explaining that they worked with music students and wanted to help her return to playing if she wanted to. The millionaire slowly walked toward her, looking far more humble than before. He cleared his throat awkwardly and said, "I didn't expect that." You're really talented." His voice was quieter now, almost respectful. For a moment, the waitress didn't know what to say, but she simply nodded politely, not wanting to create a scene. People continued coming up to her with compliments, kind words, and encouragement. She didn't know how to handle so much attention, but she felt grateful. For years, she thought her talent didn't matter anymore. But tonight showed her something different. Her gift was still alive. As the crowd slowly returned to their conversations, the atmosphere felt lighter, kinder, more human. People talked about her performance with genuine admiration. Some guests even asked if she would play again later in the night. The waitress returned to her work gently, but everything felt different now. People smiled at her with warmth instead of indifference. They saw her not just as someone serving drinks, but as someone with a story, someone with a voice, someone worth noticing. She didn't feel like she had just played a piece of music. She felt like she had opened a door she thought was locked forever, and deep inside her, a quiet thought whispered, maybe her journey wasn't over. Maybe this unexpected night was the beginning of something new.